Susan, Usan. Will the Sangha we give virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings. Please send the wonderful Dharma will to teach us how to live suffering and attain peace and birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo Sarando Sucedoye Alahadi Samya Sambuddhoje. Namo Sarando Sucedoye Alahadi Samya Sambuddhoje. Together. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Together, supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered even in a billion eons. But now we see it, hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, Dharma Masters, and good and wise friends, good evening. Today is, I believe, July 6th, Saturday. We're here in Berkeley, California. And we're going to investigate the Infinite Life Sutra, which you should have in front of you. If you turn the front page over, you'll see it says, the Sutra on the Buddha's Teachings on Infinite Life. And this text is actually a very important sutra within the Buddhist tradition that goes over the life story of Amitabha Buddha, which is the Buddha you see right above us, behind, in the stained glass window. And so, if you're first time coming to the monastery, it might be a lot of new things, a lot of new terms. But what you'll find is when you enter into the teachings, there are many, many stories of enlightened beings or those who've cultivated to success and instructions on how they did it and how their vows and their practices connect to us. And how we can both follow in their footsteps and also connect with their practices to grow in our own spiritual lives. So this text is a very, very important one that describes that process. So to start, what we'd like to do is actually recite the Buddha's name, or recite the name of Amitabha Buddha. And you'll see it on the, let's see where you can see it on the cover. I don't see it on the cover, but it's actually very simple. It's Namo, which means homage. In I think Hindi, it's Namaste. You see it in the yoga traditions, they greet each other saying Namaste. So Namo is the beginning start of that. And then Ami Tofo, which is the transliteration into Chinese of Amitabha Buddha. Amita means limitless, and Ba means light. So his name literally means limitless light, Buddha, an awakened being. So what we do in the beginning of the sutra lecture is just recite his name. This is a really good way to calm down our minds, calm down our hearts. And for some who might have a practice of the Pure Land already, you can imagine Amitabha Buddha. You can connect with your own aspirations of going to the Pure Land, however you want to access that practice. This is one way we kind of established a kind of spiritual space in the monastery. Okay, so I invite everyone to put your palms together and you can recite together. It's a very simple recitation, but in the Buddhist tradition it's actually considered very profound because we're connecting to, you could say, the life and light of Amitabha Buddha. Oh, grab a seat. Okay, so we're going to recite Amitabha Buddha's name and just follow along once you get the tune. I would encourage people to chant, not say loudly, but using your full voice. Chanting is a spiritual practice, and if you just kind of tentatively do it, you don't really get the full benefits. So if you do it with strength, with a kind of letting the sounds reverberate through your body, you kind of relax, breathe through your stomach, your dantian, your diaphragm, take full breaths. The chant becomes a chance to kind of clean out your mind, clean out your body. Okay? Namo Amido Pho. Okay, so I'll invite everyone to open your sutra text. I believe we're we're on the page 6 and page 7, if you open the sutra text. Tonight, Dharma Master Jingfo, who's sitting to my left, will be lecturing, and I'm helping to translate and also maybe share a few reflections. Dharma Master Jingfo, you can say his Dharma practice is Amitabha Buddha recitation. This is definitely his Dharma door. His name actually, Jingfo, Fo is the Fo and the Amitofo. That was the name he was given. So his name literally is translated into drawing near the Buddha, being close to the Buddha. Right? And so, and Jingfo sure is pretty good representative because he always just has a pretty happy smile, kind of walks very slowly and gently. We get to walk behind him in the line. So he'll be sharing about the sutra tonight. So what we do is we recite the Chinese, or we read the Chinese, and then we read the English. So then we get a chance to hear both the original Chinese language, which actually was originally in Sanskrit, and then also the translation into English. So I invite everyone to join in once we start.
Uh, 首先欢迎大家来一起来研究《佛说无量寿经》。佛说无量寿经啊，在以前我们我想大家都有这个本事， 然后可以翻开第6页，翻开第6页。我们已经在讲到第6页的下半页示范祈劝这个段落开始到这个完，我们请大家翻到这里，然后我们一起先念中文，然后再念英文。
So welcome everyone to the monastery. Today we'll be studying the Infinite Life Sutra together, and we're going to be on the bottom of page 6, where you see the Chinese, that very last paragraph. You'll see the SHI with a line that goes down. That's a tone mark that goes downward, and then FAN after that. So we'll be doing this last paragraph in Chinese, and then we'll do the reading in English, so everyone can find the place in the sutra.
好，我们现在开始先读中文。
So we can recite the Chinese together.
好，大家一起念，我们节省时间，大家一起念。
So you can save some time and all read together.
Yeah. 好，示范祈劝，请转法轮，以佛犹步，活红而猴，叩法鼓，吹法雷，指法剑，见法传，正法雷，要法剑，述法语，言法师，常以法音，结诸世间，光明普照，无量佛祖，一切世界，6种震动，总摄魔界，动魔宫殿，众魔则不，莫不归服。好，
Now the English. So it starts with chakra. Chakra, let's read it together. Okay. Chakra and Brahma then come and request that they turn the Dharma wheel. Now, as a Buddha, they travel widely. They roar the Buddha's roar, beat the Dharma drum, blow the Dharma conch, wield the Dharma sword, raise the Dharma banner, strike with Dharma thunder, illuminate with Dharma lightning, shower Dharma rain, and proclaim the Dharma. With the sounds of the Dharma, they constantly awaken living beings in many worlds. Their radiance illuminates everywhere throughout countless Buddha lands, causing all the worlds to quake in 6 ways. This radiance encompasses the demon's realms and shakes the demons' palaces, thereby terrifying the demons so they all surrender.
好，我们上一次讲过这个示范祈劝，请转法轮，这个是我们上一次光这2句我们就讲了1个钟头，因为这个是非常重要。为什么？就是说一个法一定要有人来传授，像现在我们的僧团或者是僧人比丘比丘尼，这个是一种他传法的责任，要转这个法轮，因为再好的法没有人传也是等于没有用，就是说这个一个转法轮的重要。
So last time we lectured this sutra, we just did that first sentence. Chakra and Brahma come and request that they turn the Dharma wheel. And we spent such a long time on it because it's a very important principle, namely that if the Dharma is not requested and then no one teaches it, then even though there's, you could say, the ultimate truth, the Dharma teachings, it's not known. No one knows about it. And so there's, you could say, living beings interested in studying it and also teaching it or transmitting it is extremely important. In a large way, this is the responsibility of the monastic sangha. the Sangha community to teach the Dharma and to keep it turning, keep the Dharma wheel turning.
所以像刚才请法就是也是一样的，有念到这个请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，这个就是一个非常重要的一个转法轮。所以我们要讲法以前，都是要经过请法的这个过程。像刚才这个我们的清凉师，他就是转了3000，这个3000就是一个在祈请来转法轮的一个过程。
So if you read the Dharma request before a lecture, there was a section that says, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel. So teach us how to leave suffering and attain happiness, become happy, and end the cycle of birth and death, and realize, you could say, transcend birth and death, go beyond birth and death. And so our novice monk, Qing Liang Shi, he just did it 3 times, Dharma request. And so that was, you could say, an embodiment of this teaching.
这个转这个3次有它的意义存在，因为在释迦牟尼佛他得到微妙法成正觉以后，就是成佛，然后他是不太想出来讲法。为什么？因为这个是非常微妙的一个法，一般人都没有办法了解，所以他就不太想讲，因为讲也是没有用。但是后来这个在经典里面讲，四就是说我们四谛，就是所谓的就是算天宫这个四谛。四谛梵音，那这个梵就是大梵天王，经过他们的这个祈请，总共多少次呢？总共请法3次，所以经过3次他们祈请，他们才这个释迦牟尼佛才出来讲法，所以这个也就是说符合我们刚才为什么要经过3转的这个意思。
So also the circumambulation 3 times has a meaning behind it. When Lord Shakra and Lord Brahma came to request the Dharma, they actually had to request 3 times. The Buddha, upon awakening, in the beginning wasn't really, you could say, moved to teach. The reason was because the Dharma that he had realized was so profound that, you could say, ordinary living beings, like the likes of us, if we're not awakened, is so profound that we wouldn't understand it. And so he thought, okay, then if I speak it and people don't understand, then it's not of much use. And so he didn't initially speak it. But so the Lord Brahma, Lord Shakra, they came down and they requested the Buddha teach 3 times. And after the 3rd time, he agreed to teach. And that became, you could say, the reason we do the circumambulation 3 times as a way to represent that.
还有另外一个很重要的一个故事，就是在大庄严经，这个是方广大庄严经里面26品有一个转法轮品，这个像刚才这个3转的这个故事，上一次我们讲过了。那这个还有一个重要的人出现，就是说他这个有一位菩萨，当中有一位菩萨，他的名字就是转法菩萨，转法，他的名字就是叫做转法。为什么呢？因为他就是在过去生的时候在燃灯佛的受记里面呢，他燃灯佛跟释迦牟尼佛受记，他会成正觉，就是成佛。他号叫做释迦牟尼，然后他那时候这个转法菩萨，那时候就是跟的在燃灯佛的时候他有发一个誓愿， 就是他发的誓，就是说这个等到释迦牟尼佛成佛的时候，我就会出来，出来做什么？拿一个转法轮这个法轮宝，这个法轮宝有千幅非常庄严的所以它会出现在这里，所以它这个刚好这个讲法的时候，他就出来拿着这个法轮出来来跟释迦牟尼佛来一起请法转法轮。
So， 他就把他的法轮拿出来啊。
有一个词。
对。
Okay,
so there's a sutra called the Turning the Dharma Wheel chapter in a sutra text, and there's a Bodhisattva actually named Turning the Dharma Wheel, and he was a Bodhisattva in the time of Burning Lamp Buddha, which was many eons ago. This is the Buddha that actually gave the prediction for Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha of our eon, to become a Buddha in our time. And so this Bodhisattva accompanied the Buddha and actually made a vow that he would come and during the time of Shakyamuni Buddha and manifest the treasure of the Dharma wheel. This is kind of like one of the precious treasures in the Buddhist tradition, and help turn the Dharma wheel when the Buddha came into this world, Shakyamuni Buddha.
所以他有发这个愿的这个愿力，所以这一次释迦牟尼佛成佛，他就出来，这个也是一种供养如来的一个算一种供养，所以他拿着这个来做这种转法轮一起的这个故事呀。
So he made this vow to come and accompany the Buddha in teaching the Dharma and offering the Dharma wheel. So this is you could say an offering to the Buddha. He was practicing a kind of respectful gesture, making an offering to the Buddha.
好，那后面我们就再继续讲像经文以佛犹不佛弘阿弘叩法轮吹法雷执法剑见法床正法雷则法殿，这些全部都是一种他在转法的这个，其实这个就是说在十相成佛或者八相成道这个中间，就是一个转法的一个算一项就对了，像八项里面一个项，那像那个有的讲十相，这个也是其中一个转法相。
So these are all different, right afterwards you see all these different analogies for the teachings. Roar the Buddha's roar, beat the Dharma drum, blow the Dharma conch. These are different ways of representing the teaching of the Dharma, the kind of transmitting the Dharma with all these metaphors. Maybe just to give people a little bit of context. So in this sutra, they're actually going through the process of all these awakened beings becoming a Buddha. So that's why they use the word they here. And so these bodhisattvas are actually going through step by step what are seen as the traditional ways that, or you can say that all the Buddhas become Buddhas. They start on a palace, they live a life of luxury, and then they realize that sense pleasures, just following our senses, isn't very reliable. I think we can all experience that. There's somehow, we can find a certain amount of satisfaction in things that gratify the senses, but it's not reliable. Once we can't get that sense pleasure because either the sense pleasure disappears, we don't have the money to buy it, or it goes bad, or our body starts to deteriorate and we can't experience that sense pleasure, there's a kind of, in Buddhism we use the word dukkha, a kind of, you could say anxiety, a stress, a suffering that comes with that. And so the Buddha didn't kind of, you could say, didn't want to put his faith in the pleasures of the senses, the joys of the senses, because it didn't ultimately satisfy. So then he left the palace. So he described that right before that. He renounced the kingdom and then went to cultivate in the wilderness, where he actually practiced extreme ascetic practices, where he would like mortify the flesh, eat very little, sleep very little, basically deny the body lots of things. So he described that his actual ribs, you can actually see each one, and like see from the back to almost like the front of his body, because it was just so thin. And he did this so intensely that he was about to die. And he thought to himself, you know what, I still don't have an answer to this question of birth and death, how to get free of this cycle of suffering. And so he then said, you know, there must be another way. And at that point, if you look at this section, you'll see right before that, he says that he goes and he meditates. It says here, he accepts an offering and spreads the grass at the seat under the Bodhi tree. He then sits in full lotus and radiates a boundless light that startles Mara, the king of the demons. And so under this tree, he actually meditates, and they say he actually realized full awakening by cultivating the middle way, that's not to the extreme of sensuality and not the extreme of asceticism. He kind of cultivated this middle way that was, you could say, deeply in tune with the way things are, a kind of skillful way of living life that allowed him to see things extremely clearly. And he woke up. He was able to, here it says, to subdue the demonic hordes. You can see the demons being outside, or you can say the demons being inside. And demons in the Buddhism aren't seen as like evil in the sense of like they're always evil. They're deluded. They're like delusions. They're like the things that that I think we can identify in our own process sometimes as like obsessions. I think that's probably maybe the closest as a quote unquote energy inside that we can identify. It's like an obsession. It's like we know it's not good for us, but we still go for it. It's like maybe we really like ice cream or chocolate. It's like, oh, I shouldn't eat like 3 scoops or 5 scoops or like 10 scoops, but you still go for it, and you kind of regret it afterwards. Or and you can take the whole range of activities that we do that sometimes we know is not good for us, but because of our habits, we continue with it. So these energies kind of control us. And this is what the Buddha subdues. He completely masters his mind. He's no longer caught in habit. His mind is free. And so the next step that happens is that he actually then is requested to teach. His kind of embodiment of this inner freedom. We just had July 4th, this Independence Day, right? America. Oh, I think I just ran out of batteries. Yeah. Yeah. Speak out. So clearly we're still dependent on technology. So we just said this Independence Day in America. And so the Buddha, you could say, really realized independence. He was completely free. He was no longer caught in conditioned reality for his happiness, for a sense of well-being. But he could actually teach and engage in the regular realm. So that's what's happening now, is that he's now about to teach. And it describes that he travels widely. He roars the Buddha's roar, meaning that he's fearless. That's what it's oftentimes related to the lion in the forest. That the lion's roar is one of the loudest sounds you can hear, and when that roar, I'll never get roaring, but the roar roars through. That's actually a word. That all the animals run in fright because they know that the king of the jungle is coming out. And so it is a kind of fearlessness. That when the Buddha teaches, he's fearless because he's no longer dependent on the conditioned realm for anything. for his inner happiness. And his wisdom is so bright and clear that any challenge that is given to him, he knows exactly how to handle it. He's described his wisdom as extremely profound. He can see causation, how things work, at the deepest possible levels. So that's why the Buddha is considered a kind of a master teacher. And these rest of these analogies, I can think you can kind of think through each one if you want. I think they're kind of there to inspire the mind. You know, back in the day before we had movies and animation, I know some people here do animation. And so these metaphors actually capture our imagination. You can kind of imagine that, you know, the Dharma banner unfurls. It's like, you know, in the movies when people are going out to battle, they unfurl the banner and they march out into battle. Or that they have thunder. Right? There's this kind of these very powerful natural symbols and powerful human, you could say human symbols of kind of victory and accomplishment. And so that's what he's kind of representing here, is that he's taking the Dharma out into the world in a very confident and engaged way. So I just like wanted to kind of make that kind of reflection. Okay.
好，像刚才讲的以佛游步，这个以佛游步就是说他亲身去以身业来教化，所以用佛的威仪来游化，这个是以佛游步。那佛弘而弘，这个弘就是当然用嘴巴来弘，就是说用口业来教化，所以他来用这个弘，当然他教化是教化一般的人，教化菩萨为目的，所以这个是弘的这个意思。还有扣法鼓，扣法鼓当然像我们生成的这个在那个宝云那个阶段，就是拜万佛宝忏的时候，就有击法鼓的这个击法鼓意思，就是说我们要开始做法会了，就是开始来敲这个法鼓，这个是振奋一个人心的一种。然后也是表示他开始要来收这个法的一个开始。另外吹法雷就是一样的，这个也是一种宣传佛陀的这个他的一些智慧给众生，来利益众生。这个就是一种吹法雷的这个应机说法，这个就是在转法轮相里面。
So here the section talks about the Buddha traveling widely. So they embody the Buddha's, you could say, presence. They have this kind of inspiring presence that as they travel, just their deportment inspires living beings. Maybe just as a side story, there's a story in the Buddhist tradition of Venerable Ashvajit. And the two of the senior disciples of the Buddha named Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdhyana. And the story goes that actually before Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Mahamagdhyana met the Buddha and became Buddhist disciples, they were actually really good friends. And they were really very popular kids, you could say. They all had like a gang of I think hundreds of other youth that followed them. And they were from very wealthy families. I think they were both Brahmins, the highest caste in India. And so at one point, though, they thought, well, we really want to find the meaning of life. So they went off and they made a pact with each other. If you find the meaning of life first, come and find me, and so we will help each other. And so that's what they did. One went off looking and the other went off looking. And what happened was Venerable Shariputra, at that time, he was just, practicing, going to different teachers, and he saw this Venerable Ashvajit who was actually at that time one of the Buddha's early disciples, who became an arhat, an enlightened being. And just from the way he walked, Venerable Shariputra was extremely stunned. He just saw his presence. You know, kind of eyes, they say eyes to nose, nose to mouth, mouth to your abdomen, probably body extremely relaxed, and it's kind of very calmly walking, you know, not kind of all rushed. And he just watched him and says, wow, who's that? And so he drew near to Venerable Shvajit and said, what is the Dharma that you teach? You know, who are you? And Venerable Shvajit actually was very humble. He said, you know, I'm just a disciple. I don't really know much. And so if you really want to study with somebody, you should study with the Buddha. You know, says, no, clearly you have something. Please teach me something of what the Buddha teaches. And I think the teaching was, the Buddha teaches that everything that comes from conditions also ends. What arises will cease. And so it was a teaching on impermanence. And from that, Venerable Shariputra actually woke up a little bit. He kind of had a little minor awakening. And so he quickly went back to his friend Venerable Mahamagdhyana, and they both went to the Buddha and became the Buddha's chief disciples. One, Venerable Shariputra, is the foremost in wisdom, and the second one, which is Venerable Mahamagdhyana, was the foremost in spiritual powers. If you look actually in the beginning, both of them, actually Ashvajit is actually in this sutra. If you look on page 1 or 2, he is 1, 2. He's the second person in attendance, Venerable Ashvajit, which next to him has the word right vows. I think that's another name of his. So I just wanted to point out that actually just the presence of the Buddha, just somebody who is very calm in their demeanor, has a transformative effect. You know, so if you go home after the sutra lecture and you're very calm, you go to a workplace, very calm, relaxed, even just that presence, you don't have to say anything. There's a kind of transformation that happens. But if you do talk, that's the next section. The Buddha's roars, the lion's roar. And so Jing Foshu was describing how this is the Buddha's ability to teach. He's able to beat the Dharma drum. In the monasteries, we have a drum. You'll see in the corner here, we have one. But in the Dharma assemblies, you'll hear people play. It's like tuk 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 tuk. And it's usually played right before the Dharma assembly begins. When we have our ceremonies in the monastery, it's kind of like to gather people to kind of say, hey, we're about to start the Dharma assembly. Come and practice. And so it's like a signal. Same goes for blowing the Dharma conch. The conch is, you know, kind of like a trumpet, if people have ever heard of a conch. It's like a shell, right? And then it's also very, very loud. It's one of the few really, really loud sounds that kind of nature has that we can just use. And then wield the Dharma sword, raise the Dharma banner. So these are all kind of metaphors.
OK， 好，继续看经文，执法剑，见法床，正法垒，要法殿。这个就是在他讲法的一些过程。我们像执法剑，我们看那个墙壁那个法剑，就是那个文殊师利菩萨他拿着这个法剑，法剑做什么？这个就是要斩断我们的那一些烦恼根啊，那一些魔根啊，这一些的。其实这个是用什么斩？他当然不是拿着剑去杀人，不是，他是用智慧，这个字算智慧剑，所以这个就是执法剑。那剑法常，你要做任何事情，他都会结集所有的一些法的怎样子来表示这个法的重要。这个就是算一个床一样的一个高出来的一个法床。那法垒的话，就是说这个表示它有非常像雷电一样的一个有厉害的关系。我想它这些可以破掉一些这个一些不对的错误的思想。等一下我会举一个仙公上人他讲了一个千年摩托的这个故事。
Okay, so So the next one is raising or wielding the Dharma sword, which is, if you look over to your right, there's Manjushri Bodhisattva wielding a sword, a Dharma sword. And in Buddhism, we don't kill. So this sword isn't used to kill living beings, not to harm living beings. So why do we have a sword? When the sword represents wisdom that's able to, you could say, cut away our afflictions, cut away our delusions. And so there's a kind of what do you call it? It's a metaphor, but I think you can also reflect that actually that wisdom sometimes has a kind of a piercing quality to it. If people have a sense of wisdom or kind of insight, sometimes, what would be an analogy? Sometimes when we are suffering a lot, like I talk about obsessions, we have obsession, and we just can't, but at one moment, we kind of see through it. It's like, why do I just do this to myself all the time? And you kind of see right through it. And from that point on, you can just put it down. There's a kind of like a piercing quality to it that you can go, and it kind of goes through it. So there's wisdom has a kind of a ability to cut through delusion and afflictions. So that's the metaphor there. Raising the Dharma banner, it was a kind of a way to show the importance of the Dharma in our lives. You could maybe say we want to prioritize the Dharma. We don't want to. There's another analogy that often is given. This is my commentary, but to say that's given for the Dharma banner is actually the banner of pride. Usually, what we run up on our flag is the Dharma of pride, where we put ourselves in the center, and then we have to protect our pride, our ego, our whatever we kind of establish as our territory. This is me. This is my territory. And if you cross into my territory, then I take out my my sword, whatever weapon I've got, and then I enter battle. So here, rather than putting your pride or your ego in the center, you actually put the Dharma in the center, and that doesn't fight. When the Dharma is at the center, then actually the body and mind is very supple, very flexible, and not going out and fighting with other people. Why? Because the priorities is very different. It's much more about kindness. It's much more about compassion. It's much more about supporting and caring for ourselves and other people and living a life of virtue, rather than fighting to become number one. And we know that, if you try to fight to be number one, in the end, somebody else is probably going to come and kill you and take over your number one spot. So it's not really worth it. And so Jing Forsher then has a story, I think, about the next section, striking with Dharma thunder, about how the Buddha talks about, or how Master Ho has a story about actually, I think a demon story. So we'll see how this goes. Okay.
好，这个上人他讲的就是那时候他说因为有一个周朝时代的一个厉鬼，就是很厉害的鬼。那这个周朝到现在已经有1000多年了，他在那时候专门害人，最后呢就是遭到天谴，然后就被用雷劈掉了，就是把它劈成碎片。但是它的灵性被劈开以后呢，经过几百年以后，它又慢慢集到一起，然后再修炼，就成了一个魔。人这个雷到时候也没有办法打它，所以当时那时候的政府是日本投降，民国政府还没有正式接收的时候，所以没有人管，所以变成说，在这种他的一个势力的一个魔力呢，他到处去害人，他总共害了99位的这个人了。 然后再害死一个人就100个人，那他可以控制100个人的灵魂，他在魔网的里面，他的势力是最大，所以一切魔子魔孙都要听他的号令。现在只有差一个，那最后呢，他遇到了我，就遇到了上人，然后就上人用大悲咒、楞严咒的一些妙法来降服他。这个故事是如意魔女的故事，所以最后他是皈依三宝了。所以就是一个这个最重要，像这个正法雷，然后药法殿，最重要就是要破魔。
Okay, so this is there's a story about how the thunder can quell the demons. So this is a story. I would say maybe just to contextualize it for those who might be coming to the monastery for the first time. So you have to imagine Buddhism is a very ancient religion for thousands of years, and it's in a time actually I would say has many different ways of understanding how our reality is constructed. And there's actually quite a bit of descriptions on spiritual realms. There's realms of spirits, there's realms of ghosts, there's realms of the devas or the gods, there's realms of ghosts in the lower realms. They describe that we actually can see the realm of animals. That's the realm that we actually kind of engage humans and animals. But actually, reality is much expanded than what we normally perceive. And so when I first came to Buddhism, I definitely was struck by how many stories were, to me, like, wow, that's really pretty different than growing up in Silicon Valley, kind of just with a kind of scientific approach, a kind of more materialistic approach to existence. This is a kind of, it's almost like walking into the middle of Lord of the Rings or something, or like Star Wars. So I'll just give you that as a caveat, but I'll tell you the story. It's a pretty interesting one. So this one says in the Zhou dynasty, there was this very powerful demon that actually went and harmed many, many people. Oh, so then in the, I think the heavenly realms, they actually try to control this demon and actually use thunder and lightning to actually kind of blow the demon apart. Okay, so it's like I don't know what movie you can use. And so, but this demonic energy was still pretty strong. And so it collected its energy over the years back and kind of regained its strength. And during the time when the Japanese had surrendered, because they actually went through China and tried to, conquered many areas and then basically were defeated, and so then they surrendered. So in China, the government was actually quite in disarray. There wasn't much peace in the land. There wasn't much order. And so this energy, this demonic energy, actually could do a lot of harm. And so over time actually has had kind of, you could say, actually taken over like 99 different people. It was actually on its 100th person who would, you could say, I guess there's different status levels in this demonic realm of how many people you control. So at 100, there's a kind of a different level. And at that point, the demonic energy actually met Master Hua. And so Master Hua was telling the story about how he actually was using the Shrangma mantra and the Great Compassion mantra in order to subdue this demonic energy. And by subduing it, the demonic energy actually took refuge within the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and actually became a Dharma protector. Became like a being who protects the Dharma. So if you read the kind of Buddhist legends and the kind of various stories in the past, there's actually quite a few stories about how the very powerful demonic energies are actually subdued. And these energies actually then get transformed into being protective energies. It's almost like if you were to imagine like the mafia in the human realm, and the mafia meets somebody who is more powerful than it, and this power doesn't come from meanness, it comes from fearlessness. The Buddhas or the great masters' kind of power and strength isn't from that of a harshness and meanness and cruelty and force. It actually comes from a fearlessness that when this energy sees it, it knows it can no longer hide. And it kind of, it pays its respect. It's like we have Master Empty Cloud, Master Xu in the back of the monastery, who was Master Hua's teacher, you could say. And there's stories about how just his presence, kind of like the Buddha, that thieves and criminals would just see him, and then all of a sudden just stop in their tracks and just put their palm together and say, "Okay, I'm sorry," and give back all their things and try to make their lives better, just because they see somebody who is deeply, deeply virtuous, deeply, deeply good. And so that's the story. So this energy actually then became a Dharma protector. So if you want, you can go and look into this story. I've realized it's actually a very popular story in Chinese circles, is because for many people, they actually, and to some extent myself as well, I kind of am overlapped in two worlds. This realm is actually quite a living realm. It's not just kind of just fairy tales. It's actually the way that they conceive reality or see how things are actually has many, many different facets that we're not usually paying attention to. So anyway, so that's just an interesting story about Dharma thunder. So the Dharma thunder and Dharma lightning, you could say, breaks apart demonic energies.
好再继续看经文，术法以言法师，常以法音结诸世间。像这个术法语，这个就是一种他所讲法是用无爱智的言辞来教化众生。这个比喻好像是一个下雨能够一直在下这种雨，就是一直来先收他的这个法。言法师这个就是漏收，就是言就是当然眼收嘛，眼收就是无爱。这个无爱智的这个来利益众生，来先收给所有也需要的众生来听法，所以这个是常常用他的一个法音来觉悟所有有情的世间能够离苦得乐，这个就是经文的整个意思。另外我想也是由来举一些佛陀他怎样子来先收这个法音的故事。
So here, the next section is about Dharma rain and proclaiming the Dharma. So the Buddha's teachings is like the Dharma rain coming down and nourishing everyone to their potential. He teaches all living beings so that they wake up. 你会讲妙法莲华经的那个例子吗？我教我解释。Okay, so actually, I think this is actually a very beautiful metaphor that you can find in the Lotus Sutra. If people are interested, there's a chapter called the Herbs chapter, and the Buddha describes how his teachings fall down like rain, equally on all beings. He says, on those who are good, but also those who are bad, who do things that are harmful. It falls on people who have great virtue and spiritual potential, and also people who are just starting out, or those who are completely confused. All the different realms. He says the Dharma teachings comes down like rain equally, just like we have all these different plants. And each plant absorbs it to the amount that they can. And so he says, my teachings is the same in that way to everyone. But when each living being absorbs it, they absorb it differently because of who they are and what's going on. And so kind of similar to right now, there's a kind of explanation Sejing Fosher is giving. And each of us absorb it or hear it differently based on our the way that we've constructed our reality, the way our mind works. Each of us absorbs it differently. And so that's kind of the spirit. The Dharma falls like rain, and each of us absorbs as we wish, or however much we can take. And so this is a very famous analogy given in the Lotus Sutra. And for me, it actually points to a very important principle of a kind of equanimity in, you could say, helping other people, a kind of impartiality, that there's not a favoritism. I think parents who are good parents, if they have lots of kids, they don't have like a favorite kid. Because if you have a favorite kid, what could happen is that there's a kind of competition among the siblings or the children, and then they have jealousy. I remember one young man came to the monastery, and he was really, really upset because he thought that his sister always got preferable treatment, to the point that he actually has some fairly serious inner issues around it, like really serious. And it came from not having been treated equally, in his mind. And so to that principle of like we treat everyone kind of, you could say, with this level impartiality of care and support. But then each person receives that differently. Each living being receives that differently. So he also has to be responsive to each person's actual conditions. So we have to pay attention to where people are at to be able to help them appropriately. And so there's this impartiality of care, but then a responsiveness to the actual situation of living beings. So that's the analogy of the Dharma rain. And so he uses that Dharma, he teaches the Dharma, and allows living beings everywhere to wake up, to teach them bit by bit. So even the bad, he actually says, even those who are doing harmful things, he still tries to teach them. But they absorb it whatever amount they can. So he doesn't say, I only teach the people I like or who are good people. It's everyone. Okay, so we have a story about this.
Okay. 好这个在法纪经里面，他就提到有一次一群比丘从佛陀到一个村庄之后呢，然后他们返回奇己是孤独园傍晚的时候，这一群的比丘在讨论当天的行程，好像是他们走过的山形地势他们讨论到底是平的或者是起伏的啦，或者是泥地或者沙地或者是红土黑土这时候刚好佛陀来了，就听到他们在讨论这一些的话题，然后佛陀就告诉他们。
So there's a section in the Dhammapada which talks about a group of monks who go off into the village and travel, and then they come back to the Jeta Grove, the monastery, you could say. They begin to discuss with one another their day's travels. What happened? The mountains were, beautiful. They were high. They were low. The ground was lush with these things. They had different colors of red and white and black and different things. The ground was someplace muddy, and at that time the Buddha comes over, and he overhears them talking and chatting, and so then he gives a teaching.
所以佛陀就听到他们谈话以后，就告诉他，你们所谈的这个山川地势是身外的环境，你们最好观身，努力去了解其中的含义。
So he says, what you're discussing is the external environment. What will be much more beneficial is if you were to take that energy and observe your internal environment.
所以佛陀继续讲说，透过观身，比丘可以了解世间、诸天跟地狱，也可以明白奥妙的佛法，就像园艺专家精心设计的花园。这些比丘听了这个佛陀的说话以后，正念现前，专心思考佛陀的教诲，终于 他洗涤了内心所有的烦恼，然后证得圣果。所以这个观身就是观身不净，观法无我，观受是苦，观无常，观什么无常？
观法，
观心无常，对。
It's sun.
Yeah,
Okay.
要常常
Body.
用这样子来做观。
So at that time, the Buddha told them, okay, rather than always looking outside, you should look inside and contemplate the body. And by doing that, you will be able to, you can say, understand the heaven, the hells, all the different realms, and be free of suffering. And so the monks took the words of encouragement and established, you could say, proper mindfulness. They observed inside, and actually, through the contemplation of the body, was able to let go of all afflictions and realize sagehood, become, I think, some level of awakening. And so their contemplation was quite effective. And so this contemplation of the body is actually part of a set of reflections called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And we heard the word mindfulness a lot in American society now. And the Buddha, the 4 foundations of mindfulness actually are mindful of something. Because the question is what is our mind, now I'm going to add a little bit, but what's our mind actually paying attention to? You can say we're mindful, we can just watch our mind. But the Buddha is saying, well, actually, if you really want to get free of suffering and really be happy, you want to use your mind in a particular way by paying attention to particular things to free you of the delusions in the mind. And so what he says for the body is that we really want to observe how the body is, you sometimes use the word impure, but maybe a little bit better way of looking at it is that it's unattractive. Like, well, why is that? You know, you look at yourself in the mirror, very beautiful. Oh, I look so attractive. Or you look at other people, very attractive. Well, the reason he's using that as a contemplation is because it balances out this mind of craving and lust. If you actually watch, you know, clearly craving and lust is one of the deep obsessions. And there's many movies about this. There's many, the Trojan War was fought over this. You know, many people died out of this desire, and it's kind of celebrated in society to a certain extent. So it's a little bit unpopular maybe to talk too much about it, but that energy, if it gets going, can actually take over all of the conscious awareness in the mind, that we're almost no longer in control of what's going on. It's just so powerful, it just kind of takes us over. And so the Buddha's antidote for that was say, actually, the reason you're getting caught up in this way of seeing things or that craving is because you're paying attention to only part of the picture. We're only paying attention to the attractive parts of something. If we actually pay attention to the unattractive parts of something, it cools down the mind. It cools down the fires of lust and craving. I mean, you can kind of even try that. The Buddha actually has you scan through the body, usually like hair, skin, flesh, bones, and he kind of goes down to all the different parts of the body. And that as you're mindful of all these different parts of the body, you realize it's just a collection of various things. You know, what's so quote unquote attractive about it? This is just what it is. And that contemplation is not to create a kind of hatred or aversion to the body. It's there to cool down the mind, to let go of the attachment to the mind. Actually, it's a very effective practice if you find that you're constantly caught up in greed and lust, and especially for physical attraction. Then what you do is you actually, they say don't do it on other people, especially the opposite gender. You say, you can do it for other people, but not of the opposite gender that you're attracted to, because the mind can easily get lost in something. So what you actually do is you usually use your own body, and you just kind of contemplate the body as its various parts, you know. I mean, the simplest, you can just imagine your body as a kind of a skeleton, and just like it's just bones inside, you know. And how is that really that attractive? And as I said, it's not to be like you're in a horror movie and it's like, oh, it's scary. It's actually just to get you familiar with, actually, this is part of my body as well that I usually don't pay attention to, and it kind of balances out the mind. You know, it says, oh, it's not just that. It's actually got its other parts too, and then so the mind doesn't get kind of caught up in its obsessions. And like similar, if we have a very, you know, like I mentioned before, if we're addicted to some kind of food, like let's say ice cream, you know, if we contemplate the ill effects of, oh gosh, when I do this, I feel really bad afterwards, or I end up gaining a lot of weight. You know, you can think of the whole list of things. I mean, ice cream is not so much of my thing. It'd be probably something like maybe spending too much time on the computer and on the internet or something. But if you think of the negative sides of it, it kind of balances out the attractive elements of it. That's kind of the approach, is that you kind of balance the mind. The second practice is, so the body is being impure. I think it's feelings, right? So the feelings, I think the feelings is that it's suffering, right? So 第二个是受是苦. Is that right, Jing Fosher? 第二个受是苦. 身是不净. So, anybody know the four? I think
观法无我，观受是苦，观心
yeah,
无常。
受是苦. So that the feelings is suffering. And so, well, how are feelings, you know, even pleasant feelings they describe as suffering. Why is that? It's because feelings come and go, and they're ultimately unsatisfactory, meaning that we can't rely on them to really give us ultimate happiness. This is actually quite revolutionary, I think, at least in current times, because we put so much authority in our feelings, right? We kind of go with our, like, what do I feel in the moment? You know, if we all sit down and share our feelings, like, this is like really meaningful because we're sharing our feelings. And the Buddha is not saying that our feelings are not important. He's pointing out the fact that if we put our faith in our feelings for our sense of well-being, then it's going to be very unstable. We'll have a lot of anxiety because our feelings are always changing, right? One moment I could be feeling very pleasant, and another moment I'm feeling a lot of pain. So the Buddha says, actually, you can actually develop a sense of inner well-being that's not being moved by the feelings of pain or pleasure. And so what he says, that the feeling, you contemplate feelings as suffering, you contemplate feelings as unsatisfactory, you no longer give your feelings that much power over your state of well-being. So that's the second contemplation. So first is, you don't get attached to the body. You don't get obsessed with the body. And the second is, you don't get caught up and attached to our feelings. That you have a deeper sense of awareness and well-being that doesn't need to be dependent on feelings. The third one is, I think, our thoughts, right? Our thoughts are impermanent. There's another one, is that our ideas, our concepts, the ways that we think, this isn't, you could say, isn't a constant. They're constant, you could say the constant is that they're constantly changing. It's going from thought to thought to thought to thought. And the tricky thing is sometimes we get attached to a thought. You know, it's like my idea. And then somebody has a different idea that's different than my idea, or criticizes my idea, and then I get all angry about it, and I kind of try to defend that idea, and it gets into a battle. You know, but we realize, oh, actually our thoughts are just passing phenomena. There's no need to cling to it. There's no need to hold on to it. It's just to let the thoughts rise and let the thoughts fall. Sometimes the thoughts can be very scary, you know, something that I've done in the past that I'm really regretful about. The same thing happens. You let them rise, you let them fall. You let them rise, let them fall. So you start to begin to develop a bit of distance, a kind of ability to observe thoughts without getting wrapped up in them, letting them control ourselves. When we get lost in our thoughts, we can't even sleep at night because our thoughts are just running. It's like, okay, I can develop a kind of coolness, a kind of distance, an ability to observe. And then you can actually start choosing your thoughts on what thoughts you want to follow, like good thoughts, you follow those. The unwholesome ones like jealousy and anger and lust, you go, well, actually, I don't want to go over there, so I can go over to the kindness, the joy, the wish for others' well-being. I can kind of go in that direction. So that's the third one, the thoughts. The last one is dharmas, and it says that dharmas, or phenomena, is not self, has no inherent existence. Maybe how to think about this is that on one level, I think this is maybe the most gross level, the dharmas are things that we experience, like phenomena. This kind of phenomena, oh, interesting. I think this might be, I wonder if this is a real leaf or not. It feels like plastic. These dharmas that we experience has it's sight. There's kind of, if I were to touch this, there's touch. You can hear that clink, that's sound. So there's various phenomena that we engage with, and then these dharmas get collected into like a full-on image and concept that we kind of say, this is a flower that has all these colors to it, and we kind of perceive. And so in the practice of saying dharmas are not self, you actually see that any of these things that we're perceiving, if we really look at it carefully, has no inherent existence unto itself. Like if you look at this flower, you say, well, what part is the flower? Is it the petals? Is it the stem? Is it the color? What is it, the leaves? What makes it what it is? And as you start to break it down to all its various components, you realize there's actually nothing that actually makes the flower the flower. I don't know if that makes any sense. And so by doing that kind of practice, where you realize that things in the world are actually made up of many other parts, they're conditioned, they come to be and they cease to be, you begin to develop a kind of non-attachment, a kind of freedom from the various phenomena that are occurring. We don't get washed up by them. So like maybe a more concrete example is like the newest iPhone or something, or the newest doodad that they're trying to be sold to you. Rather than getting caught up in all the kind of gimmicks and the kind of chrome and the shininess around that's created around it to get us to buy it, we actually can see through it. You know what? That iPhone is just another digital device, which is made of a lot of different components that does lots of different functions. And you know what? I don't actually really need it. There's nothing like inherently there that I actually have to get. Most of it's just fabricated in my mind and being fabricated by other people to kind of sell this to me. And so by being able to see dharmas clearly, then we don't actually then get so caught up in them as well. So these are seen as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And the Buddha here is saying, don't pay so much attention to the world outside. These monks kind of walking around and kind of commenting on the scenery. It's actually much more interesting is our inner landscape. What's going on inside? And how do you cultivate that inner world so that you can get free of suffering? Okay, sorry, that went on quite a bit.
好，然后就是刚才就是一个释迦牟尼佛他的一个转轮法相，所以他像这样子的一个在用他口来宣传这个常以经文上常以法音结诸世间，就是说他常常来宣扬这个佛法的法义，来利益这个众生，给所有的众生都能够觉悟，都能够远离烦恼，离开邪见邪知。所以这个不只是说好人坏人也都是一样的来 给他们利益，来劝导他们，所以这个是一个觉诸世间常以法音像释迦牟尼佛他宣扬佛法49年，这个是一个非常难得的。
So the Buddha uses you could say, his mouth to teach. He teaches the Dharma, and he awakens all living beings everywhere. He teaches both good and bad, and they all are transformed to become better, to wake up. And so the Buddha taught for 49 years. His teaching career was 49 years.
好，那在大方广佛华严经里面，他也有提到这个这个成佛的那时候，他跟这个波旬魔王的一段对话。
So in the Avatamsaka Sutra, there is a recording of when the Buddha became awakened, his conversation with Mara. Mara is like the lord of the you could say the demons. He's kind of like the overlord of he's like the mafia boss. Yeah, we say that way.
所以那时候的来劝这个波旬魔王，那时候是他已经被释迦牟尼佛击败了，所以他就劝他说魔王，你谛听我今以此断你的一些怨痴，就是说你怨恨，灭你恶业，除你嫉妒，成就你三藐三菩提，你应该回心生大欢喜。就是说这个是一个他不只是度好人，他也要度坏人，希望他能够回心转意，也鼓励他能够走向三藐三菩提的道路。所以这个是你应该要生欢喜心的，这个是给他的一个鼓励。
所以是他自己断了这些东西，希望他也可以断这些东西吗？意思是这样子？
不是，
就是
我今天断你一些仇恨
断他的，
断魔王的。
Oh, okay. So the Buddha, upon awakening, was talking with Mara, and he told him that, today I actually helped you break through your hatred, your anger, your jealousy, your minli 什么？
灭你恶业，就是他
try to reduce your negative karma, your pride, your jealousy, and help you realize unsurpassed awakening. So really, you want to reflect within, to turn your heart, turn your mind heart around, and really have a heart of great joy. So you can see here, the Buddha doesn't just teach good people. He actually wants to teach everyone. He teaches, even the Mara, the lord of the demons. And so you can see that kind of breadth of spirit. It's not just the good, it's also teaching the bad.
像这个他讲这一段话，就是说坏人也要度。像上一次讲的深空上人，他度那个如意摩尼也是一样的，叫他皈依，最后叫他要皈依三宝，改邪归正。所以这个就是我们不只是度好人，也要度坏人。
So you can see that this story is also similar to the story we just told earlier about Master Hua teaching and transforming the kind of demonic energy. That not just that you not only help those who are good, but you also help those who are in dire straits, who are not doing so well. Maybe just add one thing there. I actually think this is not a small matter in the Buddhist tradition. You can think about it, there's this kind of cosmological level, but I think at a psychological level, it actually is quite important, is that even the deepest, darkest, most despicable parts of our minds and our hearts is actually not something we want to ignore or push away or be angry at. I don't know if that makes any sense. That the Buddhist relationship to it is actually a wish for that, even that deep part of us that might be really something we don't even want to face, of kindness, care, and support to wake up. You know, that's the kind of inner fearlessness and kind of intentionality. So in the Buddhist tradition, there's no part you can actually cut off as evil and then push it away. That's something that's not a skillful move of the mind. The practice is actually bringing more and more into conscious awareness, into this kind field of conscious awareness that actually illumines. Let's talk about next section. Talks about this radiates everywhere. It illumines everything. All of consciousness is illumined and woken up and freed. You know, and is opened up to its potential. And so you can see it on a cosmological level about this demon and the Buddha talking. But in a certain sense, that dialogue happens inside ourselves when we actually meet some of the more, you could say, darker parts of our habits or the things that we've done. And rather than saying, okay, no, I didn't do that, I don't want to take a look at it, it's actually, no, I did that, I take responsibility, I shine some light on it, but I can actually repair and make it whole again. So that's the spirit in terms of this relationship to this energy. It's not that you push it away or you cut it off or you kill it. In the Buddhist tradition, there's no, this smash and destroy. I know someone was telling me that this is, I'm out of my expertise because this is definitely not my realm, but people explained to me, one of my friends who actually kind of from a Taoist family, that in the Taoist tradition there's actually a lot of capturing and kind of smashing of, I see some nods from the Chinese in the front of these negative energies. And the Buddhist tradition, that's not the spirit. You don't actually like try to smash and destroy these negative energies. You actually try to teach and transform them. You know, they're all living beings. So that's what Jing Fosha was describing, that the relationship with the spiritual realm, even negative spiritual energies, is not that of destruction, it's that of transformation. Yeah.
好，下面我们再看经文：光明普照无量国土，一切世界六种震动。所以这个因为他常常来宣扬这个法义，来利益有情的世界，希望都能够走上正道。所以他能够光明普照无量的国土，一切的世界都有六种震动，像这个六种震动，我想就是可能有三种声音，就是正、弘、寂，然后形象的就是动、涌、起这种六种震动。那真正的这个，我想大家可以去查一下 ，Google 一下，或者是日点，哪六种震动的详细说明，给大家回去做功课。
So next line talks about how his radiance shines everywhere, and he's able to cause everyone to wake up, and the earth to shake in 6 ways. So I will let people investigate yourselves these 6 ways of shaking, how the earth shakes. You can probably Google it or look in a Buddhist dictionary. This is actually something you can find pretty easily. And so, now that Jing Fosha do the next line.
下面我想，总受魔界，动魔宫殿，众魔则不莫不归服。这个就是一种他专门来摄这个降魔的这个在包括宫殿里面，使那个一些宫殿的魔，他们都非常的害怕，所以大家都能够归服归正就对了，这个都能够最后能够希望都能够成佛。这个就是这个后面的经典的，至于说，我想后面详细的，我想留下一次我们再继续解释这个蛮有意思的这个 魔殿、魔宫殿、魔女这样子的。我想下一次我们再跟大家继续来研究这个。
Okay, so given the time, we'll pretty much finish. So in the last sentence on this page, it talks about this radiance encompasses the demons' realms and shakes their palaces, causing them to be terrified, so they all surrender. And so next time we can talk a little bit more about detail about the palaces of the demons and their realms. But I think actually it's quite interesting, just this last sentence related to what we were talking about a moment ago, is that in spiritual practice, as you cultivate and begin to lessen the cravings and attachments in our mind, what happens is actually a radiance. In the Buddhist tradition, they actually describe that our inherent potential has this deep wisdom to it. We actually have this wisdom that's actually a light, a radiance that shines outwards, and so as we remove the coverings on it bit by bit, all the things that we cover it with, then it starts to shine out. And here it talks about how it actually can, we can say all the worlds, if we look inside, we imagine all the different places in our hearts and our minds. The light just shines through. And then it shakes, you can say it shakes those places that are kind of dark and confused, and it breaks them apart. Sometimes to break a habit, you got to kind of shake it a little bit, and then it kind of gets free. The negative ways that we've been handling ourselves kind of are subdued. And that energy, which is going into this negative pattern, can actually now be used for something very positive, right? Let's say this energy of jealousy, which is using the energy up for a lot of competitive, looking out, comparing, sometimes even wanting people to be less successful so you can be seen as more successful. All that wasted energy of kind of, you can actually just start to transfer over to say, you know what, I actually want that person to be as successful as possible, and I'll be really happy for them. And so that energy actually becomes a very joyful and supportive energy for yourself and the other person that actually is mutually supportive. It doesn't mutually harm. So this basically is taking all these negative patterns and then beginning to transfer them into much more positive ways of being, positive ways of interacting. And so in this spiritual practice, the Buddha's awakening actually opens up this light, which then basically deconstructs all the demonic energies and realms, all these stuck places, these obsessions. So they all surrender. They give up. They say, sorry, okay, we'll be good now. And then there's a kind of a free, open-hearted mind, or in this sense, a free, open-hearted realm. And not just the Buddha himself, but actually his presence and energy actually shines out and can actually influence the realms around him in a very profound way. But you can also see, I think, sometimes in a family. If you have just one family member who's very, very grounded and wholesome, they become like the pillar of the family, and things somehow work out. You just have one. Like maybe it's like a grandma, and somehow she's very calm, and parents get upset, but then she calms them down. Or maybe like an uncle who's always funny and joking, but in a wise way, not like a cutting, mean way, right? And then somehow everyone's at ease, and there's this kind of presence. And so you can actually see somebody who actually has real wisdom and this kind of peacefulness can actually influence a lot of the people around them. So that's kind of the spirit. Okay, so that's
好，这个关于这个六种震动，我们看前面经文，他出生以后，看出生以后行七步，然后后面他就开始有自称我当已是无上真，然后这个他出生以后的走了七步以后，就有发生六种震动，所以这个现在第二次的我们他讲法的又六种震动。这也算是第二次的有六种震动。
So you can see on page 5 on the bottom, it talks about how he is born. The Buddha is born and takes 7 steps, and at that time, the earth shakes in 6 ways. So this is the second time the earth shakes in 6 ways in the sutra text. And so just as a note, that's also, if you don't do the Google search, if you do the Google search, I think you'll find more information. But this shaking of the earth isn't like the earthquakes of like, the Loma Prieta earthquake, like what, that's like maybe a 7.1 or something. That like, I remember in my home when that happened. I actually saved my mom's life in that story. Okay, I'll tell the story. Is that actually like I'll tell you how it happened. So I'm at home. I'm like what? Maybe like so help 1989. No, 1989. So I'm like 89. That early? 1990 something. When was the Loma Prieta earthquake? 89. Okay, then I was just 7 years old. Okay. Anyways, so one of the worst possible things to do in my life was play piano. It was like the most boring thing to do. So my mom's yelling at me to play my piano. And I said, no. She finally gets so angry at me, she stomps out of her room and says, I'm going to get you to play your piano. So she's taking me down the hallway. And as we're going down the hallway, the whole house starts to shake. The first time I don't have to play my piano. Because I was like really shaking. And then when we went back to her room where she was sitting, she has these huge bookcases behind her with all her she was actually an accountant, she has all these tax books on her wall, and all the bookcases had fallen right where she was sitting. So I thought, I saved my mom's life. Anyways, it's not an earthquake like that. The earthquake of the Buddha doesn't harm anybody. It's actually it's supposed to be a very pleasant earthquake. It like actually brings joy to people and things. So you can look it up yourself. But it's like the earth's way of celebrating. Maybe you could say that. The earth celebrates a being's awakening. Okay, so I don't.
他这个佛陀的6种震动，一切世界，它这个跟我们的地震不一样。
对，跟我们地震不一样。So that one I think we should make clear. Yeah, the earthquake of the Buddha is not like the earthquake of how we normally think of earthquakes in like California, which are very dangerous. You got to know where your earthquake fault line is. Yeah.
不过讲地震，它这个形容这个声音啊，这个这样子摆动各方面在给你旋转，还有声音轰轰轰，这个是真的有。在台湾嘉义大地震，那时候我是高中生，我知道我们在那里。我在读书傍晚的时候，真的来的时候，真的一直在踩，这样子在动。它这个是一个，然后声音真的轰一直过来，这个是真的。他讲的这个6种震动大概都有，所以那时候的嘉义大地震是非常严重的。地震完以后就开始火烧，嘉义市很多呢大医院啊、大戏院啊都火烧。这个是真的一个发生的这个讲这个声音，这个6种震动啊，地震的时候都会有的。
So you're saying that the 6 ways that the earth shakes, if you actually look at kind of earthquakes, I know people have experienced it, but Jing Foshu was saying in Taiwan, he actually experienced a very major earthquake in Jiayi, and when you can feel the earth shaking and you hear all these different sounds, there's like this hong sound coming through and the shaking sound and the various things. And so at that time it was a major earthquake, and after the earthquake, a lot of things were all on fire and flames in the hospitals and all the various places. And so if you actually pay attention, you see there's actually lots of different sounds that accompany and different movements that accompany earthquakes. So this is describing a lot of those different sounds. But as I said, this is not the earth quaking in a way that's destructive. It's a way that, I would actually say, it's probably the better way to say it's the earth celebrating something really good happening. Which is very different. So nobody gets harmed. And there's actually some stories about this. We could tell some other time. Okay. So we will just finish here, unless there's any questions or reflections. You get a kind of a whirlwind tour of lots of different things. When Jing Foshu and myself are sharing, we're kind of like in different world systems, so different generations. But maybe you could say tomorrow we actually have a concert, if people are interested in Buddhist music, with Reverend Heng Shi and Imi Oi. I know people know Imi Oi. She does a very famous chant called the Chant of Metta. I won't try to copy her singing it. But if you probably have heard it if you go to like do any yoga studios or kind of retreats. They often play it in the background music. It's a kind of she has a very, I would say, meditative but pleasant kind of voice that kind of just connects kind of to the heart. And so she's very popular in Asia. And so we actually invited her over for the recent Global Buddhist Conference. First time here in America, and she brought 5 of her, you wouldn't call it band, what you would call it? You wouldn't really call it backup singers either. What would you call them? Connie, what would you call them? They're their own group. Okay. So their own name. Yeah, they're the Jing Si Jing Gang. So they're like, they're their own group. Yeah, okay. Teamed up. So she's teamed up with this other group. That's why. So she has another group of young men who are all very good singers, hand selected. And so they're trying, I think it's interesting, she's actually trying to create like the boy band thing with the, how there's a popular kind of that's in this realm, like the Boys to Men or something. That shows my dating. But rather than having them go off into like the way that music sometimes goes into a life where virtue isn't so emphasized, for them, they actually are trying to maintain a very kind of disciplined, wholesome life. And their music kind of represents that. You'll hear that their sound is very pure. It's a very clear sound. It's a very pure sound that they're holding. So they'll be here tomorrow, and then we'll have Eve Decker. We'll have Joe Barazan. What's her name? Jennifer Barazan, who people heard the song She Carries Me, that River Hong Sure sings. She carries me, she carries me, she carries. She actually wrote that song. So she'll be here tomorrow. And I think Alan Sanaki will be here tomorrow. He was the head of the co-abbot of the Berkeley Zen Center. And so he has some kind of American kind of bluegrass, guitar music. So if you have interest, it'll be a very informal concert. We didn't really advertise widely. We're just letting our own inner community know. And so if you're interested in kind of coming to participate, it's 3 p.m. tomorrow at Berkeley Monastery right here. Other than that, oh yeah, this is the first time, at least for me that I know of, that our organ will be played. Imi came to the monastery and saw the organ. She says, "Oh, I actually know how to play the organ." So okay, let's try it out, and it actually works. So she'll play some things on the organ too. Other than that, I think, is anything happening upcoming? We're having Buddha Roof Farm next week, but all the spaces are already taken. If you're in the there's the Guanyin session afterwards. So if you want to do a retreat after Buddha Roof Farm, which is July, when does the Guanyin session start? 20th? July 20th to 27th. There's a retreat up at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. If you want to cultivate and deepen your practice, it's a really good way to do so. You can ask me more after the lecture, but if you are online, you can go to extension.drbu.edu and find the details of the Guanyin retreat there. If you haven't done it before, it's highly recommended. It'll definitely give you a flavor beginning to see how you can actually begin to calm down your mind to see your life much more clearly. Other than that, I think that's pretty much our summer schedule. Yeah, school and all our classes will start up more in full in the beginning of September. Yeah, next week we'll still be doing the Infinite Life Sutra because Dharma Master Shi, who's today at a Jain conference, will be actually at Buddha Roof Farm. So Dharma Master Jingfu will be explaining the Infinite Life Sutra a couple of times before Reverend Hong Shui comes back and lectures. Okay. So if there's anything else that I'm missing? No? Yeah, tomorrow there's no Amitabha Buddha recitation day because we have the music concert. Okay, so you can turn your sheet over. This is a practice we call a dedication of merit. It's taking the goodness of coming together to hear or listen to the Dharma. And we can share that with other people, whoever we feel is maybe in pain or suffering, ourselves, our friends, our family, our loved ones. and or a cause, something in the world that we want to heal, or the standards we wish to send it out, like in the sutra, to all worlds, to all beings, wishing that they'll wake up. So however you want to send the goodness is up to you. But in the Buddhist tradition, it's not a big deal. It's actually very important. This goodness that you have in terms of being here and studying the Dharma gets bigger and bigger if you spread it in your heart. Okay, so you can turn your page over and you'll see the verse. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. We can all stand and face the Buddhas, and we can bow. Okay, so 3 bows. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Namaste.